Good evening, and welcome to this webinar sponsored by the City of Los Angeles Department of Cannabis Regulation Business Licensing Compliance Assistance Program. I am Ethan Spalding from the Social Equity Program team. BLC programming is designed to assist social equity applicants in the City of Los Angeles with obtaining a commercial cannabis license and operating a successful cannabis business. This installment of our 2024 webinar series focuses on OSHA workplace safety for cannabis businesses. Now, before we get started, let's take a moment to review some housekeeping rules. Please note that this webinar is being recorded and can be viewed only on DCR's learning management system after the editing process. You will be muted with cameras off for the duration of the webinar. This means that your camera and audio functions will not be available to you during this session. However, you will be able to see and hear all the panelists. There's an open chat box where you can interact with one another for networking or comment on the information. Please use caution when sharing personal information in a public forum and keep your questions focused on tonight's topic. Please ask questions about tonight's subject matter in the Q&A box. We are gathering and responding to your questions throughout the presentation, and we'll have a Q&A session where you will get your responses in the last portion of tonight's event. You are encouraged to use the Q&A box at the bottom pane of your Zoom screen. If you use the Q&A box for questions, everyone will be able to see the questions when they are answered. Finally, please note that tonight's content was not created by the Department of Cannabis Regulation or the City of Los Angeles and is for informational purposes only. This information is subject to change and does not replace or supersede the Los Angeles Municipal Code nor constitute legal advice. If you have specific questions outside of tonight's topic, please call 213-978-0738 during business hours, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. to speak to a DCR representative. Please welcome tonight's presenter, Matt Hayashi. Matt is an OSHA authorized general industry trainer with Cannabis Clearwater LLC, an instructor for Cal OSHA industry training for cannabis professionals. He is an achievement-oriented manager with a proven 14-plus year record of accomplishments in the pharmaceutical industry that includes experience in sales, U.S. international business development, logistics, purchasing, contract analysis, and investor relations. He founded Cannabis Clearwater LLC, a full-service compliance company assisting the cannabis industry with permits, licensing, and growing a business. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you, Ethan. And thank you, everybody, for giving me the opportunity. Good afternoon or good evening. It's a pleasure, and I am looking forward to sharing current and past OSHA rules and regs in the cannabis space. So I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, so OSHA is a federally regulated body. OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And OSHA has also another division called Cal OSHA. Cal OSHA, California Occupational Safety and Health Administration. They are two separate entities. And today we will be primarily talking about the cannabis in a Cal OSHA, from a Cal OSHA perspective. So if you have any questions, I teach both Fed and Cal, but for today we will be strictly talking about from a Cal OSHA perspective. Although the rules and regs do mirror each other, there are new rules, one of which I want to share at the end of this presentation from a Cal OSHA perspective. So again, my name is Matt Hayashi. I have been in the pharmaceutical industry for the past 14, 15 years. And when I really think about safety, And I think about safety from a perspective of it could happen to anybody, regardless if you are trimming hedges at your home, climbing a ladder, doing to clean the the leaves off of your roof. We are in the winter times now. My internet shut off, so I don't know what happened there. So I'm on my hotspot. Anyways, let me go back to sharing my screen, and I'll start all over here. Um, Here we go. So I don't know how much I missed, but I'll speed through some of this stuff. OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration. And we do have a CalOSHA, which are two separate entities. CalOSHA and OSHA, they're two separate governing bodies. And that's it. There's no New York OSHA, Atlantic OSHA. It's just CalOSHA and then OSHA, Fed OSHA. So, again, my name is Matt Hayashi. I was a safety manager in the pharmaceutical medical device world for 15 years. And now when I think of safety, I don't know how much I'm or you missed, but when I think of safety, I think of anybody can get hurt, whether regardless if you are at home or if you are at work. You can break a leg at home. You can also break a leg at work, which it happens. And it's a good message to be safe, wear the appropriate PPE, whether it's a work-related injury or if you are at home blowing leaves. People slip all the time. The number one type of accident in in general industry is slips and falls. And right now we are heading into the winter, and people can slip and fall all the time. And lower back injuries occur all the time. I've seen it. And when OSHA gets involved, citations, you see the inspections and the audits. So, when I think of safety, I think of wearing the appropriate PPE. Why cannabis? Cannabis is it is it's a it's a growing industry where it's a multi-billion-dollar market. It's a 65 billion globally. It's a 25 billion-dollar market in the United States. Looking at all of the from a tax revenue perspective and from the states are making a lot of money. And while that is a good thing, we also want to consider the safetiness involved in cannabis. In cannabis, people use a lot of different chemicals, carbon dioxide, a lot of washes, a lot of detergents, a lot of electrical and water safety, as well as heat. And bear in mind that you want to make sure that you are following the rules and regs perspective, because if you don't, then you will get a citation. I've seen it hundreds of times. We get calls all the time, and our clients who are in a jam, they need help, and we help them by creating an SOP, creating plans, fire emergency plans, action plans, PPE, a lot of different appropriate plans, whatever that you do. It doesn't matter if you're in whatever ancillary that you're in. The important thing is that in the cannabis space, you want to take those safety precautions. Anybody can get hurt. And we've seen it. I've seen it. There's been deaths already in the cannabis space. So it's very important. I'm very passionate about the safetiness in cannabis. So it's one of these things where I tell my clients and I tell people who are wanting to go into the cannabis space, let me see your procedures. What are your safety procedures? And I've been on tons of grows, labs, manufacturings, big ones, small ones, and I spot issues all the time, and I know that an OSHA officer will give out a citation. So I hold this close to my heart. I've traveled all over the world from a medical perspective, business perspective, and still say it comes down to safetyness. And I think it's really important for us to understand that, you know, being in the cannabis space, when you hear OSHA, the general feeling is, excuse me, the general feeling is OSHA is check things off the box and you're good to go. But that's not necessarily true. It's a living, breathing thing. And once you get your documents in order, they are living, breathing documents. And you want to make sure that you practice what you preach. Otherwise, if you don't, then they will issue out a citation. What I expect out of some of this trainings and this class for today is for you to get a better understanding of what OSHA is all about and what Cal OSHA does and how we can help you. It doesn't matter if you're a grower or if you want to run a dispensary or a lab, transportation. It really doesn't matter. They're all the same. You want to, I want you to make sure that you learn a lot. Okay. Now, the purpose of this for OSHA. Why is OSHA important to you? What rights do you have under OSHA? What responsibilities does your employer have under OSHA? What are your OSHA standards? How are OSHA inspections conducted? And where can you go for help? These are the 6 topics that I want to talk about. But there's one more that I want to share with you, and that comes from a state perspective. So I'm going to share my screen and pop this up here. Okay. This is the nuts and bolts of cannabis in the state of California from a safety perspective. This is the State of California Department of Industrial Relations page. They govern the safetiness and the Cal OSHA regs for cannabis growers, and this is what they have to say about this. Now, I'll go down into the topics in a minute, but here it says all employers in the cannabis industry must take steps to protect their employees from all health and safety hazards associated with their work. This includes those who cultivate, manufacture, distribute, sell, and test marijuana products. Several Cal OSHA regulations apply to workplaces in the cannabis industry. And this webpage contains links to the regulations and other helpful resources for providing a safe and healthy workplace in the cannabis industry in California. So it really doesn't matter. If you want to grow, that's totally fine. OSHA, they don't care from that perspective. They don't really care if you're a cannabis grower or not. They're not, they're not frowned upon. I talk to a lot of OSHA officers. I've called the main office. They don't really care. All they care about is safety. What they are trying to do essentially is making sure you are caught up to the rules and regs under general industry. Okay, there are 4 types of standards in OSHA. You got your construction, general industry, maritime, and agriculture. Cannabis falls under general industry. General industry is defined as everything that's not construction. So if you are in textile, restaurant services, that falls under general industry. Everyone else has to abide to these rules and regs. What they're trying to do is they want to make sure that you are caught up to those standards as well. That's all they're trying to do. Okay, that's all they're trying to do. So So, workers, you have to have an injury and illness. Employers in California are required to take steps to protect workers from all workplace hazards that can cause injuries and illnesses. Everyone in the cannabis space must have an IIPP. And in short, what I tell my students when they take the class is I try to bring it as simple as possible. IIPP is a binder full of rules and regs that you have to abide to. That's all it is. It's a binder. You print out the title page called IIPP, and in it is a lot of different things. Okay. And that is the the heart of safety when it comes to OSHA, okay, in cannabis space. So some of the things that we teach and we educate and we really drive it to make sure that growers and manufacturers really understand that this is a serious thing, because people die all the time. And there was an explosion a couple years ago. A grower died, and OSHA got involved. So there has been a death already. One, I think, a couple deaths. One suffocated or got the oxygen mixed up with another gas, and the person died. So, and another person died because of they were allergic to cannabinoids, if I'm not mistaken, and that person passed away. So they are out there. My guess is everyone's rushing, and they are not understanding the rules and regs to OSHA. And what the state of California is trying to implement is something that everyone else needs to abide to. So here, anyone in the cannabis space, when they take OSHA, they have to learn about electrical hazards, exposures to airborne contaminants, flammable liquids and gases, hazard communication, your lockout, tag out, heat illness prevention indoors, heat illness prevention outdoors, your IIPP, machine hazards, your PPE, personal protective equipment, your point of operation hazards. It's where the work is really where it's being done. So imagine a drill press being at the tip of the drill being burrowed into a piece of wood. That's the point of operations. You don't want to get your hand stuck underneath there, or kind of like a chain, like a sprocket and chain type of thing. You don't want to get your hand caught under there. Pressure vessels, prohibition of smoking in the workplace, repetitive motion injuries, sanitation and pest control, slips, trips, falls, and the use of ladders. Again, slips, trips, and falls is the number one causing accidents in general industry. And here we are again coming into winter. And then workplace violence prevention, labor code 64019. So that's a new one. Okay. Now, in accordance with the California Business and Professions Code, employers, this is the rule here. Employers with 2 or more employees must ensure one supervisor and one employee have successfully completed a Cal OSHA 30-hour general industry outreach training course offered by a training provider that is authorized by an OTI education center. Okay. So if anyone is out there, when you are interested in creating a business in the cannabis space, if you have 2 or more employees, you have to take the Cal OSHA 30-hour general industry training course. Not Fed OSHA, Cal OSHA, okay? There's a big distinction. California, they only care about Cal OSHA trainings, right? Not Fed OSHA. So it's important to distinguish the both, because if you take the Fed OSHA and you get your card and there's an accident and Cal OSHA gets involved and they say, let me see your card, have you taken the 30-hour? And someone shows their Fed OSHA card, it's a big citation, and you would have to take the class. So here, from a Cal OSHA perspective, again, 2 or more employees must ensure one supervisor and one employee have successfully completed the Cal OSHA 30-hour general industry outreach training course. Okay, so that's one of those things where you have to do it. Okay, in Nevada, in the state of Nevada, it's required that anybody and all who are in the cannabis space has to take the OSHA training. Here in California, they are saying the supervisor and one employee, right? One supervisor is going to be the safety manager. The other one is going to be the employee. And that's good enough because they're going to oversee tons of people who are working. In Nevada, that's different. Everyone has to take the OSHA class. So great. I'm going to go back and share my screen here. So why is OSHA important to you? Let's see, 4,405 workers were killed in 2013. This is an older slide, so I would imagine some of the numbers are going to be lower. I'm going to presume they're going to be lower. Nearly 12 workers die every day. This is general industry. 797 Hispanic or Latino workers were killed in 2013. And 3 million serious workplace injuries and illnesses were reported in 2012. In the 70s, OSHA wasn't really a thing, okay? The construction companies really didn't understand that a worker who had a plantar fasciitis or who got carpal tunnel, from the employer's perspective, the employee was fungible. So they could replace anybody at any time, and it didn't matter the consequences. There was no rules in place. Now that OSHA, who President Nixon signed off on the act, worker deaths are down from 38 deaths a day in 1970 to 12 a day in 2013, and I suspect it's even lower right now in 2024. Worker injuries and illnesses are down from 10.9 incidents per 100 workers in 72 to 3 per 100 in 2012. And again, I presume that those numbers are even decreasing. Again, OSHA stands for Occupational Safety and Health Administration. The act was signed by President Nixon in 1970 and created in 1971. Okay. This is OSHA's mission: to assure safe and healthful working conditions by setting and enforcing standards by providing training, outreach, education, and assistance, developing job safety and health standards and enforcing them through the work site inspections. We are talking about a work-related injury. If someone is at a dispensary, and it could be the most immaculate dispensary of all time, it could be, clean, spotless, super safe, and someone slips and falls, an employee slips and falls and breaks a leg or stabs himself, OSHA is definitely going to get involved. It doesn't matter. You could have the cleanest record in the history, and if somebody slips and falls and they have to go see a doctor, and we'll get into this, when do you have to go see a doctor? OSHA will get involved because it is their mission to assure safe and healthful working conditions. Okay, so the question really is, how do you know when OSHA is going to inspect your area if there is an injury? Okay, there is a rule. There's an injury log that the safety manager have to fill out. It's called the 300 log, and it's an injury log. Now, on the injury log, it states that if the injury goes beyond first aid and they have to go see a healthcare practitioner, OSHA will definitely inspect. Okay, so if the injury goes beyond first aid and they have to go see a doctor, then OSHA is going to get involved. All right. So, for example, if you are a grower, an indoor grower, you run a nursery, 10,000 square feet, Costco size, grow, and someone gets a splinter and they have to go see the safety manager. They take out the first aid kit. Now, does that mean they have to go see a doctor? Generally speaking, not, because if it's a splinter, you take the tweezers out, you pull the splinter out. If it's bleeding, you put a Band-Aid over it, you're fine, and that person goes back to work, right? It does not have to be recorded because it does not go beyond first aid. On the other side, though, if someone passes out because of too much carbon dioxide and they faint and they collapse, that it goes beyond first aid, because you have to call 911 and you have to call the healthcare practitioners and whatnot. That is beyond first aid. That has to be logged in, and OSHA will definitely get involved. Okay. So what rights do you have under OSHA, right? A safe and healthful workplace, 100%. Know about hazardous chemicals. In manufacturing cannabis, and you're using a lot of cleaning agents, a lot of detergents, if you're doing pressing, mixing, you're going to use a lot of different chemicals. These employees have the right to know what kind of chemicals they are using, okay? You have a right to report an injury to an employer. Don't just hide it. You also have the right to complain or request hazard correction from an employer. You also have a right to do training and be retrained. That's the key. You, as an employee, have the right to ask to be retrained. If you forget how to do it, it's okay. Talk to the person in charge and get retrained.
And eye thing is,
Well, I think
I cover my eye with I use.
it's over here by me.
It might be.
And document it. Okay. You have a right to file a complaint with OSHA. You have a right to participate in an OSHA inspection anonymously. You have a right to be free from retaliation for exercising safety and health rights. So employees, they tend to shy away if they're first time on the job and they don't want to get fired. If they see a hazard, generally speaking, they're mostly afraid of losing their job, so they're not going to report it. But here, you do have a right to call OSHA if you see a hazard. I've seen it done all the time. And they are protected by the OSHA's mission. You're not going to lose your job if you call OSHA and they inspect your employer's safety record, okay? Not going to do that. They have handout posters for everybody. They're really great informational kits that you can get online for free. If you need one, let me know. I will be more than happy to email it to you. Safe and healthful workplaces. It's the law, okay? It is the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970, again, signed by Richard Nixon, okay? Know about hazardous chemicals, SDS, right? Back in my day, it was called MSDS, but now it's called safety data sheets. One of the things that I've seen in the cannabis space alone, generally speaking, in the cannabis space, it is wild, wild west, but you still have to maintain an order to understand what this is all about. So you have to understand what chemicals, you have to understand what detergents are. If you're ordering chemicals, you
Oh,
are.
you hear? Yep, it did. It fell on the floor. And you hear this?
You are totally responsible to you are totally responsible to understand what these chemicals are. Okay, so understanding what these safety data sheets are is super important. There's a record keeping rule for everybody for 10 plus employers, and I can get that to you if you want it. I could email that to you, what the record keeping rules are. We can go over it, particularly the 300A. Workers may report safety and health concerns without fear of discharge or discrimination. So if you if you saw somebody, get gouged, or if there's an injury and you are afraid to report it because you may lose your job, well, OSHA will protect you from that, okay? That's what this is all about. OSHA is a steward for the employees. That's all it is. They don't have the power to shut a business down, and we can get into that if you want. But OSHA oversees the employee safety and hazards. That's what it's all about, okay? Fire, electrical, water, whatever. It could be anything. If somebody gets hurt, they're there to help you out. Again, training, you have the right to be trained, including chemical hazards, equipment hazards, noise, confined spaces, must be in a language and vocabulary workers can understand. So if it's in English and then you have a non-English worker, you have to, by law, you have to get a translator so that they understand what you are training them to, okay? Right to examine copies of records. If you get hurt and you have a medical record, you have a right to request the record, okay? If you are allergic and you have allergic reaction and you go see a doctor, a healthcare professional, they will treat that as an allergy, a work-related injury, and they will record that. And they will let OSHA know, and then OSHA will knock on the employer's door and start asking questions, right? And again, you have a right to file a complaint. It's confidential. They do not tell anybody. And it is to the employee's benefit, because in this day and age, because there's so much pressure trying to reach their bottom line, you know, they are just scraping by, not only from a corporate perspective or from an LLC perspective, you know, from a mom and pop shop, sole proprietor, it really doesn't matter. If you get hurt, OSHA is going to be there to help you out, okay? And it's confidential, all right? You have a right to participate in OSHA inspections. You can't do that. You can't request an OSHA inspection, and you have the right to follow them around. You can't talk to them privately. So for example, if an OSHA inspector inspects a cannabis lab and a worker talks to the inspector while they're doing their inspection, you have the right to approach them. And you can say, hey, can I talk to you for a second? And, you know, there's some chemicals here going on. What's the rules here? I don't feel safe. You can't talk to them privately, all right? And be free from retaliation, right? Workers have the right to be free from retaliation for exercising safety and health rights. Remember, this is not just for cannabis. This is for all types of industry under the general industry. Restaurant, transportation, auto mechanic, anything that's not construction, ag, or maritime, it doesn't matter, okay? You are free from retaliation. Now, switching gears, employers' responsibilities under OSHA: provide a workplace free from recognized hazards, comply with OSHA standards, provide training, keep records of injury and illnesses for at least 5 years, provide medical exams when required by OSHA. You have to forfeit your medical records. They will give them back to you, but you have to forfeit them. If they request them, you have to forfeit them right then and there. Post OSHA citations, provide and pay for most PPE. Under law, from a OSHA perspective, the employer's responsibility to provide any type of PPE, any type of protective equipment. So if, let's say, and I've had this where I've done a class, one person was a cannabis manager at a cultivation center. He was allergic to the terpenes. The employer had to provide a mask, a breathing apparatus, gloves, and the employer had to provide that at the employer's cost. The employee did not have to, okay? It is the employer's responsibility. They have to report the worker's death and a work-related hospitalization, amputation, or loss of an eye, okay? Maintain an injury and illness records and make records available to all workers. At the end of the year, most of the time, workers, the safety manager has to post how many injuries there were in an area like the break room where anyone can see it. And that's a federal OSHA law. Cal OSHA does it too. So in February, if you go to a construction site, if you go to a restaurant, they are going to post how many injuries happened within that following year, in that previous year. And OSHA, about that time, they're out there looking for that type of stuff, because if you don't have it, huge citation. 4 groups of OSHA standards: general industry, construction, maritime, and agriculture. I'm burning some of these things here. I'm going through them pretty fast. Limited Limit workers' exposures to hazardous chemicals and substances or noise in cannabis. It does get noisy, and I'm suspecting in the next 10 years, a lot of people are going to lose a hearing and they might have some eye damage. The reason is in the drying, when harvest time and the cultivators are drying, they have these big giant oscillating fans, 20 inches, 25 inches, and it's not just one, it's like 50 of them in the warehouse. To us, you know, it's a whole bunch of fans, but from an OSHA perspective, if it is 85 decibels or higher, you are required to wear noise protection. Okay, I do it all the time when I'm at a grow and there are drying, you know, they're in there and they're drying their product. I always wear ear protection because I do not want to get ear damage, right? So they should too. And I always whip out my decibel meter. If it's more than 85, then I tell them, hey, you got to provide ear protections, okay? Require the use of certain safe work practices and equipment, and require employers to monitor certain hazards and keep records of workplace injuries and illnesses, okay? There is, one of the things that OSHA provides is the frequently cited OSHA standards. Also, they also provide all of the citations in the United States. And you can go back from, I don't know, 50s, well, for some of these, from the dawn of OSHA, so 70s. So from 1970 to 2024, you can look up a company and you could see how many OSHA citations were issued to that company. You type in Home Depot, you punch it in, and it'll show up. You type in, you know, Starbucks or whatever, you understand, it'll show up. You could do by zip code, you could do it by county or by state. You could also do it by the type of industry that they're in, okay? It is on the record, it will stay on the record, and you get to see whether or not what citations or other infractions are applied based on the injury that occurred, okay? So OSHA inspections are conducted, compliance safety and health officers, CSHOs may conduct workplace inspections at reasonable times, unexpected and unannounced too. They can do that, okay? Different types of OSHA inspections, if their employees are in imminent danger, fatalities, they have to. Worker complaints, targeted inspections, local emphasis programs, national, and hazards for industries, particular hazards, and as well as follow-ups. Generally speaking, when an OSHA inspector comes to inspect, they may ask to follow up, and it's always a good, you know, you want to say yes. You know, you want to say, yeah, you want to play with them and you want to act cordially. We do a lot of training on how to respond to these OSHA inspections, but generally speaking, they're regular people that are doing their job to make sure that everyone is safe. So if they want to do a follow-up inspection, the safety manager is going to say, yes, let me know the date, and we'll be more than happy to do it. Willful violations, the penalties, $70,000 for each willful violation with a minimum penalty of $5,000 for each willful violation. Serious violations is $7,000, maybe up to $7,000. Other than serious, OSHA may propose a penalty of up to $7,000, and then a repeated, OSHA may propose penalties of up to $70,000 for a repeat violation, right? Repeated violations up to 70, and I've seen more, okay? There are other types of violations. I wanted to show you, we're at the deadline here for time, but I do want to show you a couple things here. There are resources for you. This is the OSHA website, www.osha.gov. Do not hesitate to call them, ask them any questions. If it's cannabis related, you know, do not hesitate to call them. They know what they're, you know, they know the rules and the regs, and they will be more than happy to help you out. Also with Cal OSHA as well. Other institutes, National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, your NIOSH, they do a lot of testing. Your OTIs, your OSHA Training Institute is another good resource. Doctors, nurses, and other healthcare providers, public libraries, and other community-based resources. Also, your OTI instructor is good too. The other thing I wanted to show you, and we're coming down towards the end, was the importance of OSHA, including the history of safety and health regulation leading to creation of OSHA and OSHA's mission. But one thing that I wanted to share with you, I'm going fast because I think it's important here. And I'll go back to some of these if you have any questions here. Here it is. This is a new rule in 2024. Now, bear in mind, remember, this is not just cannabis, but it reflects on cannabis, but it's for everybody in general industry. They changed the rules here on outdoor temperatures. So when the indoor temperature reaches 82 degrees or higher, employers with an indoor workspace that reaches 82 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, when workers are present, they must implement a written indoor heat illness prevention plan. Now for cannabis, because harvest is August, September. For cultivation, it's August, September, sometimes July or late July. It can reach up to and past 82 degrees. So if that's the case, then you have to have an indoor written heat illness prevention plan. And I provide those all the time. And it's a good way to record what's going on with respect to your employees, okay? When indoor temperatures reaches 87 degrees, and it will do that in cannabis, in the drying rooms, in manufacturing, it can reach up to 87 degrees. You have to measure and maintain records of temperature or heat index measurements, whichever is higher, for 12 months. You have to do it. You do not have a choice. So if you run a dispensary and it's really hot in there, if you have to record the temperature. If you don't have air conditioning, you have to record the temperature. If you have a manufacturing and it's 87 degrees or higher, you have to record it, okay? These are some of the new rules for 2024. There are other ones, but I wanted to point these out because in the cannabis space, temperature is always a thing, and we want to help, employees, right? You want to help those employees. So I think it's worth our while to take an extra second to talk about these things. That's pretty much it. And, I will open it up for a Q&A. I do appreciate the time, and I apologize for the internet thing. I don't know what happened. It was really weird. So I do apologize for that. But if you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll be more than happy to answer them right now.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt. It's a great presentation. Let's go ahead and jump into the Q&A. So the first question we have for you today is, if I have a small operation, do I still need to take OSHA training?
If you have 2 or more employees or one supervisor role and one as an employee role, the short answer is yes. Now, if you own the operation, so for example, if you are the owner, right, and you have another family member. So let's say, if you want to get real, let's say it's a husband-wife team, and they are the sole owners of a cannabis operation. Cannabis looks at it as you have 2 people working. It doesn't matter if it's a wife, husband team. You still have to take the 30-hour training, such that one is act as an employee, one acts as a supervisor. So the short answer is yes. The short answer is yes.
Awesome. Next question is, how often does OSHA do inspections?
Great question. OSHA does inspections all the time. And from a cannabis perspective, they are out there looking at dispensaries, looking at labs, manufacturing facilities, big giant manufacturing facilities, really. Dispensaries, transportation services, distribution, and warehouses, they will look at that as well. The numbers is such that they just don't have the resources to hit every single cannabis operation, because you have to remember they're looking at other operations as well besides cannabis. So I really can't give you a number like how many people are out there today hitting a cannabis place, because general industry covers, again, automobile, textile, retail, grocery stores, schools, the food industry, restaurant industry. So they're not just targeting cannabis, they're targeting all of these other industries as well. So, but bear in mind, when you say that, it tells me that you are not prepared. So the best answer that I can give you is be prepared as much as you can when that unannounced inspection occurs. They are very nice. They will give you a little bit of latitude. If you started, so one of the rules for OSHA, if you just started your business this year in 2024, you have about a year to get all of your IIPPs in order, and they give you a little bit of latitude. So if you just started your business today, 2024, in November, they will give you about a year. They may not inspect your operation until 2025 of November, right? But they are looking at other cannabis businesses who have been around longer. Okay, so they give you about a year. They give you about a little latitude there.
Perfect. I know you touched on it at the end of the presentation, some of the changes that were happening in 2024, but the next question is, do you know of any potential changes that are going to be happening in 2025 and beyond that people need to be made aware of, they can start preparing themselves for today?
They get together, OSHA gets together at the end of the year and looks at the injuries and types of injuries in the cannabis space. They will announce the new rules probably in March for the following year, and they will start implementing those. And so they announced those rules in 2025 Marchish or March, and they don't start regulating it until like June, July, later on, and then they will definitely start hitting it in 2026. So at the end of the year, they talk about what injuries are, you know, what's most prevalent. How can we mitigate these things? We have a book. It's a general. Cal OSHA has a book called. I don't know if you can see this. This is. I can't see it because it's blue. Anyways, it's the OSHA California, State of California General Industry and Electrical Safety Orders. It's a big book that's over 800 pages, and all it is just rules and regs. They create these rules and regs because somebody died. So they take rules, they create the rules, they put it in the book, and sometimes they take it out. So we should get a new, probably in a couple months, like 5 months, we'll find out what are the new changes.
Thank you. Next question is, do conflicting state and federal laws on cannabis impact OSHA enforcement in cannabis businesses?
That's a great question. So I'll give you a scenario. If, let's say, somebody died from working in cannabis manufacturing, and let's say somebody had an allergic reaction to the terpenes, and the safety manager filled out the report and they sent it over to the state, and the healthcare practitioner said this person died of an allergic reaction. If this is just hypothetical, if Cal OSHA knocks on that operations door and they introduce themselves, "Hi, we're Cal OSHA." 2 seconds later, they get another knock on the door saying, "Hi, we're OSHA, we're Fed OSHA." Okay. Generally speaking, Fed OSHA does not encroach on Cal OSHA's jurisdiction. Okay. They don't do that. In fact, they never do that. If anything, they rarely talk to Cal OSHA. They're two governmental bodies, but Cal OSHA has its own, and Fed OSHA takes care of everything else. So Fed OSHA and Cal OSHA will not commingle. They will not interact with an incident. Cal OSHA, if there's an injury in California, Cal OSHA will be the one involved.
Great, thank you. Next question is, what kind of PPE, personal protective equipment, are required for employees working in cannabis cultivation or extraction?
There is a form that I hand out during our trainings. It's called a hazard assessment form. In it, the safety manager is responsible to test the operation from a chemicals perspective. The form it's a checklist. So if you are a trimmer, if you're doing a trimming operation, right, you hire these trimmers, right, the 1099, and they're out there trimming. You fill out this hazard assessment form, and it's a standard form from OSHA. What do you need from trimming? What can you foresee happening? Well, if they're trimming, they're going to use scissors. Okay, so if they're using scissors, can they cut themselves? Yeah, they probably could. So do you think you need, what kind of gloves? Like sharp prevention gloves? Do you think you need, what can happen? And you go down this list. So depending on the type of work that you are doing in the cannabis space will ultimately determine the type of PPE you'll need. You could do it in dispensary or in dispensaries as well, right? Cultivation, indoor, outdoor. Generally speaking, cultivation outdoor, it's a lot of farming, a lot of hoses, a lot of tractors, right? There's all this tools. It's a legitimate farm. I've seen hundreds of them. And from that perspective, you may need to wear boots because it's so slippery out there, or you may need to wear long sleeves because it's hot, right? Indoor, a little bit different, right? Indoor nurseries, indoor warehouses, 10,000 square feet warehouses, a lot of water, a lot of electricity, a lot of light, right? A lot of light, right? 10,000 watts, whatever, whatever the watts. Do they need eye protection? Do they need hearing protection in the dry room? In a lab. In the lab, they're working in the lab working with acids and bases. Do they need vinyl gloves or rubber gloves? Can somebody get hurt? Can somebody get something in the eye, an acid spill in the face? Do you have to wear goggles? And like I said, in dispensary, like you would think it's one of the safest places, but people slip and fall when they're mopping the floor. At the end of the day, generally speaking, they use detergent and they use bleach. One of the two most, I don't recommend it, combining those two at all. Someone can faint because they don't know the bleach to water ratio, or they put too much detergent and they slip and they, injure their knee, right? Can that happen? What do you need? Are you supposed to read the, the fine print on those labels? So it is up to the safety manager or the owner's responsibility to determine what type of PPE, and bear in mind, they have to pay for it. The employee does not pay for it. The employer pays for it. The type of PPE that they have to use, right? So I hope that came across as clear, because it's important for them to understand that.
No, definitely. I think you provided a lot of great examples of what the different types of equipment would be for different scenarios. So thank you for that. Let's get a couple more and then we'll wrap this up. What kind of challenges do delivery drivers face when it comes to workplace safety, and how are they addressed?
In terms of injuries, there's a couple things, and we've been seeing it more now that there's a lot more deliveries. One of which is slips and falls because there's cracks on the sidewalk. People tend to fall and they could damage their knee where they might have to go see a doctor. The kids are carrying a whole bunch of stuff, a lot of product. They have to watch the sidewalks. The other thing is this: lower back injuries are increasing in the cannabis space, and my guess is that they are carrying heavy loads and do not how to properly lift certain things at a certain weight. Okay. If you are lifting a 10-pound product, you're putting a lot of pressure down your spine. And if you don't properly bend your knees, you're going to have a lot of spinal injuries and a lot of knee injuries later on. So what we've been seeing is when a delivery is made at a dispensary, and because dispensaries now make money selling CBD water or CBD drinks and THC drinks. Some come in 10 in a case. There's 16-ounce bottles, right? They're like a case of Coke, right? So there's 16 ounces in its glass, and they're heavy. Time is always everything. So sometimes they'll be carrying 3 or more cases, and it's like 45 pounds. And if they bend their back in a certain way, if they twist their back, that is definitely a lower back injury. So we're seeing a lot more heavy lifting, and they should not. They have to take their time and, make sure that they know how to properly lift. When it comes to deliveries, like home deliveries, delivering homes when someone calls, they get the app, and they have to make a delivery. Some of the injuries that may occur, I haven't seen it yet, but deliveries to homes are more residential, like animals, like dogs can bite the delivery person, and that is an injury, right? That is an injury. That's 100% injury. So I have not seen that. I mean, I've seen it for regular deliveries, but not from a cannabis delivery perspective. But so these are some of the things that every safety manager has to foresee the unforeseeable. That's the challenge of a safety manager. That's a challenge. You have to foresee the unforeseeable. So that is going to be, one of the things that will be up in the air when they start writing their SOPs.
Right, let's end it on this one. What are some common mistakes that cannabis businesses make when trying to comply with OSHA regulations, and how can they be avoided?
A lot of things that I see is they don't take the OSHA training class. Growers, cultivation, indoor, outdoor, distributors. I mean, we taught so many, but we get a lot of people who need it now. We need it now. We need it now. Like, we will get calls from growers saying, "Oh man, this OSHA guy came in. I have no idea what this is all about. He asked if I need to, do I have my OSHA card? I need to take it now. When's your next class? I need to do it now. Right? I don't want to get that citation. I don't get fined. I don't want them to shut it down, which they can't shut it down. But one of the things that I emphasize, because it is a state-driven rule that you have to take the OSHA training, get it done now, sooner than later, sooner, because you are going to start your operation. And once you start your operation, once you submit your application to the Department of Cannabis Control up in Sacramento and you get your license, OSHA will definitely see it pop up, and they may do your inspection. I've been to I was at a grow 2 months ago. This guy bought 50 acres and he grew, and he didn't have his OSHA card. And he had gasoline right next to his propane tanks, right next to paint thinner, and it was 100 degrees. And I just shook my head. I just told him, like, it's not good. He had 1-inch diameter hoses to every single plant, and he had like hundreds of plants. It's a tripping hazard. So get your OSHA training done now. That's the best advice I can give. Get your OSHA training done now. Get it out of the way. Okay. Don't go for the Fed OSHA. Get your Cal OSHA card. You only have to take it once. I don't give tests. We don't give exams. There's no expiration to the card, so you only have to do it one time. There's no expiration. Once you're done, you're done. Okay. So that's the best advice that I can give everybody in the cannabis industry.
Thank you. That is great advice. And I guess small follow-up question to that last question, and then we'll really end it. In this OSHA training, you mentioned on the previous answer for the delivery drivers how they may injure themselves lifting the heavy drinks. Does the training provide education on how to properly lift things and things like that? Is it like that comprehensive?
One of the required training modules as an OSHA instructor that we are required to teach is ergonomics and lifting. So yes, if someone takes an OSHA class, there's a lot of fraudulent activity going around. If that OSHA trainer does not teach proper lifting techniques and ergonomics, they may not be an OSHA trainer. But generally speaking, Cal OSHA requires the trainee to take the instructor to teach proper lifting techniques and ergonomics.
All right. Thank you so much, Matt, for the presentation and for answering all those questions and providing a lot of wonderful examples. So thank you again. We hope you enjoyed this webinar on OSHA workplace safety for cannabis business. We hope you'll join DCR for the next webinar. It's on annual state licensing updates. This is scheduled for November 21st at 6 p.m. For any questions, please contact dcr.scp@lacity.org, dcrlicensing@lacity.org, or contact your licensing analyst directly. And also, don't forget to access the reference materials listed in the chat. And thank you all for attending.